Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Sam Gabriel here, and welcome to What If Deku Was in 1B Part 17. Just wanted to greet you guys by just saying sit back and relax, you're in for a treat, so we begin. The world was spinning in dizzying circles as Izuku's consciousness wavered between imagination and reality. What's going on? It was a question he couldn't answer. Where am I again? Once again, he couldn't answer. The boy was missing an arm, and had lost too much blood to even stand. Nothing was really making sense anymore, and to make matters worse, Shigaraki was ready to capture him.
We're taking him with us again.
Taking me? Uncertainty clouded his mind as Izuku could feel contact on his only arm. It was twice holding him up with Shigaraki's instruction, and he could hear some voices below. Below? More questions fluctuated around the hazy abyss of his mind. Memories of what had transpired crashed like waves on a stormy night, when a single conscious thought entered his mind. It felt impossible. Izuku's wish to save the girl was stronger than anything else, yet the world seemed to be against it. All the odds were not stacked in his favor. Upon the platform where they stood, backup was not an option, and anyone who could potentially help was forced back by the quirk-destroying bullet. The arm Overhaul had taken was bleeding out, and the blood had stained the greenette a crimson so deep a certain blonde villain was almost blushing to the floor. He could only die quicker as the quirk circulated through his bloodstream. By activating his power, Izuku would only increase his blood pressure and bleed out within seconds. But I have to make sure, Annie. The situation was not good. No one really moved, and despite his body being restricted by every shackle fate gave him, the freckled boy persisted. He desperately tried to think of a way out. His oxygen-deprived brain tried its best, but there was nothing he could do at that moment. Izuku couldn't find a way to live. No, it wasn't right. I can't die. And the thought wasn't ego or a trait. Because the boy closed his eyes and listened to the quiet sobbing that echoed from the ground up. If I die, then she would be sad. The concept of seeing Eri any more upset than she already was hurt the greenette more than he realized. The reason was just that he didn't want the girl to witness another death before her eyes, as every one of them emotionally hurt. I was lucky to have someone, but her. Gritting his teeth, the greenette came to his conclusion. If I use one for all, I would only have a minute of my life left, give or take. That just means I have to escape quickly and survive. Forcing the blood vessels to light up in a shimmering crimson, a heavy grunt escaped his lips. This hurt more than I expected, but one for all. A smile accompanied the freckled cheeks as Izuku let the quirk cycle through his body. He only had one chance. At the highest percentage he could manage, the lightning discharge made twice hesitate in holding him down. 23%!
Hold him down!
Shigaraki wasn't expecting the boy who was already at death's door to be able to expel the power Izuku was radiating before his eyes. Yet here he was, being stared down by the greenette, who only wished to save others with his life at the edge of their elevated state. Blood pooled down the greenette's lips and joined the stream from his shoulder stub. Cute! Toga skipped merrily right up to the dying greenette and wore a crazed smile. Covered in so much blood, Izuku. Too bad you don't have an arm anymore.
Shut it, vampire! This brat doesn't just die, but even the doctor can't fix him if he falls from here. Get him away from the edge.
At the command, the villain latched Izuku in a hug. She was like a predator upon her prey, and Shigaraki grinned. The creepy smile only sent a shiver down the greenette's spine, but before the boy could resist, a hushed whisper reached his ear. Listen to me. The seconds of Izuku's life ticked away, as Toga spoke in a volume close to silent. The girl liked a lot of things. Friends, crushes, and girl talk were among her favorites, and after observing others, she based her likes on what others did too. Therefore, in Toga's opinion, the normal teenage girl's favorites were her favorites. The blonde villain just never understood why others wouldn't go out of their way to like the things she did. Blood. She didn't fit in anywhere, and no matter where she went, the world wasn't an easy place for a bloodsucker like her to live in. That was why I liked Mr. Staney. He did everything to make society easier to live in. Toga's memories then stopped at Izuku, when he took down the Yakuza without judging her plea for help. Treated me like a normal girl. Hugging the boy who she was holding captive, a small smile pulled itself onto Toga's lips. I couldn't cut him as much if he was a villain. With one last squeeze, the blonde girl gave a Cheshire cat smile. You better survive. I did say I would play with you next time. This time doesn't count. Huh? The brunette glanced at her through hazed eyes as she pushed him toward the edge. She was genuinely trying to save him, because if Shigaraki took him again, the young leader would kill the brunette within minutes. Izuku was at death's door. Toga wanted to bet on the small chance he would live. That single miracle. He would be a good hero. Gravity's clutches wrapped the boy's body in a cold embrace as the last ounce of Izuku's strength ebbed away. There was nothing he could do. His body felt as heavy as lead, and like the last petal falling from a cherry blossom tree at the end of spring, the brunette tumbled from the stage. Izuku could no longer fight. Is this it? The freckled boy's sense of time seemed to warp, as if he was under Chrono's quirk. But Izuku knew better. His life was flashing before his eyes, and it seemed that Night Eye's latest foresight was coming true. Eri watched as one of the heroes who came to save her started to descend toward the ground, and the small girl froze. Is someone else going to die? 'Cause of me? Head first, Izuku found himself facing the ceiling as he plummeted toward the ground. A bright light seemed to crack down from above, and the sight of a clear blue sky flooded down in a single stream. Through his dull viridian eyes, the boy could see Eri's ruby-red eyes fixed onto his body, and he sighed. Damn it! The single fist could barely even clench, as his quirk barely responded. Only a single crackle fizzled out pathetically, as regret bombarded his mind. How can I call myself a hero if I can't even... His broken legs flailed in vain, as his hazy vision was filled with blood. Mind closing like the end of a story, Izuku started to lose all his senses to the world, as the floor rushed to greet him. Oh, this means I'm breaking my promise. A peaceful smile danced on the brunette's lips as he apologized to his best friends. He had promised to talk to them the morning after, but now... I'm sorry. The ground was awfully close, with death sat on the surface. The embodiment of a pitch-black abyss held its cold, desolate arms open wide as the freckled boy's body was unwillingly dragged forward. It was such irony, as just a little while ago he had received an earnest hug from someone who cheered him up. The tsunami waves of emotion flooded his mind, but had simultaneously cleared it. Am I really going to... The world darkened as the boy started to close his eyes. Deku! Funny, I hear her voice last. Viridian eyes gently opened one last time to see the familiar, kind face falling from the sky with him. Light rings of energy seemed to radiate from her body as she moved with gravity down to the broken boy. Her indigo hero suit was stained crimson with his blood, but she didn't care. They rotated in the air so that her shimmering forest hair gently tapped against Izuku's freckled cheeks. Hey! Izuku smiled back, with nothing else on his mind. Hey! Bam! A dust cloud erupted from where they landed, and all Izuku could hear was a buzz of background noise. His ears tinkled with the roar of silence as warmth washed over him. Nothing else seemed to matter. Just a few minutes earlier, Tokage and the magic hero, Majestic, had pinpointed the location they needed, and had immediately arrived on scene. There had obviously been a struggle, as there was an unconscious Yakuza member in a giant cage riddled with tranquilizer darts. What happened here? Majestic got wind of the situation from the diligent workforce as Lizardy split up into smaller pieces. Apparently, the man had been digging a hole when he couldn't escape, but why would the Yakuza dig from the center? Wouldn't it make more sense to dig at the edge? A small part of herself went through to see what was below, when she immediately retreated. Majestic, it's the League, they're here! The pro-hero reflexively took action. Tokage split just enough to fit through the hole made, and collected herself whole once through. She needed her full weight to fall faster, and hopped onto the magic hero's energy rings to boost her speed more. With no hesitation, she dived down. Eyes scanned the situation when a small gasp left her lips. The moss pupils had recognized a familiar brunette, and he was not in good shape. Izuku was missing an arm and bleeding out, but that wasn't the main problem. Toga had just pushed him off the ledge. Deku! Her heart skipped a beat as she saw the beat-up boy fall headfirst downward. Pain seemed to grip her throat as the air itself seemed to slow down. Her pulse rang loudly like sirens in her ears as her hands desperately reached forward. I can't. Her mind briefly tormented her with a flash of Izuku's dead body splattering onto the ground like a reverse firework, but she forced it out. She was never going to let what she thought come to pass. even if it meant changing fate itself. He's not going to die. He's not going to die. Splitting her body and having her arms outstretched before her, Tokage kicked off the rings of energy and smiled. She didn't care that his blood had dyed her indigo hero suit crimson. She was relieved that she could reach him in time. That was all that mattered. She rotated them so that she was between the ground and Izuku, letting her long forest green hair fall past her face and protectively tap against the freckled cheeks. She had always loved it when a smile adorned the boy's face, and a small grin appeared when they met eyes. "Hey," it was all she could manage to say, but it was also all she needed. The smile she loved so much grinned back, as Izuku whispered back, "Hey." Hectic. If the next few minutes had to be described in one word, the female greenette chose hectic. The two students had landed on the ground with an eruption of dust in their wake, but the girl didn't mind. They were alive. She had used all of her strength to slow the fall, so when they landed, the ricochet wasn't fatal. It was a reckless move, since she was now missing most of her body, and the dinosaur lover could already hear Monoma scolding the both of them again. She didn't care, though. With her consciousness, she could regenerate, and her efforts had saved her dear classmate. With Toga's actions, Shigaraki had been momentarily confused, and Ryuko was not going to keep staying on the ground idly. She immediately transformed back and aimed for the League, but the leader, as usual, was quick to react. A portal opened, and he, along with the rest of the League, left the premises to bother the heroes another day. They did leave the silent overhaul, however, and the Dragoon hero was quick to retrieve him. Restraining him even though he was quirkless, he was brought to the police as everyone else tended to the injured. The rescue mission was a success, but at what cost? Eri sat next to Izuku and Tokage, her vermilion red eyes crying as she looked around. Mirio was permanently quirkless and taken away by Aizawa, as other heroes tended to night-hide temporarily for when the ambulances came. Kodai, Yanagi, and a few other pros were taking Chrono and the other unconscious Yakuza away as Ryuko landed nearby with Chisaki. The young leader glared at the child, and she froze in fright. "Hey, it's okay." Tokage floated a partially regenerated hand to pat the white locks of hair and gave a toothy smile. "Deku's gonna be okay too. We all are." She pulled the child closer and rested her forehead on the kid's shoulder. "We did this to save you, so don't be upset. I'm sure Deku did this so you wouldn't cry anymore, so let's wipe those tears, okay?" Eri nodded, her horn fizzing a pale gold as she did, and the other grinned. "That's a good girl. When we get better, we can—"
"If you want to survive, then stay away from her."
Chisaki spoke out, and the child froze again. Ryukyu roughly shoved him to get him to shut up, but Overhaul wasn't fazed. He had lost absolutely everything. He had nothing to lose. All he wanted was to give the Yakuza the power behind the scenes and let them rise to the top again, but now nothing mattered.
"The child's cursed. It's the reason I had my hands on her in the first place. Keep being nice and she'll kill you too."
"You're the cursed one for saying that to just a child," Tokage yelled back reflexively. She didn't know what was going on, but she did know the unconscious boy in her arms had been brooding over his work study for the past few weeks. The cause was most likely the man before her.
"Say what you will. You'll both die since she can't control it."
"Shut up already and keep walking." Ryukyu took Chisaki away, and the silent child looked down. His words rang in her mind like a pitch-black cloak covering everything, and a larger spark fizzled out of her horn. It was as if all the guilt and pain she carried was being held down within her small, fragile body and was leaking out through her horn. Her quirk scared her as the first and last time she remembered using it, the power took form in golden light. The excess power had surrounded her body, and the next thing she knew, her father had disappeared from existence. She had killed him. Now, the sparks of golden light scared the child more, and with Tokage reaching out to calm her down, Eri screamed, "No!" Pulling back, she grabbed at her hair in desperation to hide herself as the child sank into the floor. "I'm cursed! Stay away!" Her screams caused the heroes to turn in their direction, but Tokage just smiled. Reaching a hand out with her palms facing upward, she gently patted Izuku's blood-stained hair as she waited for a response. "No, you're not. I may not know what your quirk is, but it's surely precious if that jerk was willing to go so far to get you back." Eri looked at the girl who was so kind to her moments ago, and looked at the boy who she had bumped into a few days ago. They were all so warm, and the fact that they had come to save her made tears gently fall again. She didn't trust herself, but she did trust these people. Holding a shaking hand out, She grasped Tokage's, and the older girl pulled the three of them into a hug. It felt safe. A thin, golden light surrounded Eri as she hugged Tokage, and although the dinosaur lover took no notice at first, she jumped as the boy in her lap moved. Deku? She had no time to question the boy, as she felt her own body move against her will, and to her surprise, she watched as her body's regeneration was suddenly reversed before her whole body started to reappear. Healing? No. My regeneration stopped for a moment. She glanced over at Izuku, whose missing arm had returned, but the oldest cuts were still there. Are you doing what I think you're doing? It's almost as if... Wait, stop! Eri saw what was happening and struggled from the hug, but Tokage didn't let go. Both of the students' bodies had suddenly returned to normal when a violent outburst of golden white sparks started erupting from Eri's horn. Stop! A white scarf wrapped around the two students, and they were dragged back as the light was dispelled as quickly as it came. Dusk forest eyes caught the glare of tired quirk erasing ones before turning back to Eri, who fell to the floor. Wait! She's just unconscious, she'll be fine. The 1A homeroom teacher had returned from escorting Mirio away and ran over to the kids. He gently picked up the resting girl as he motioned to Izuku. Tokage smiled and nodded, gently putting the unconscious boy's arm around her shoulder. She glanced from the person in her arms to the one who had reversed all his damage and smiled. A toothy grin danced onto her lips as she thanked the girl in her head. The dinosaur lover was extremely grateful that Izuku was alive and promised to thank the girl out loud later. For now, it was an easy trip to the hospital. For them, at least, as Sir Night-Eye was taken with the sound of sirens echoing away in the distance. They didn't know at the time, but even if they had twisted fate with their own hands, it was only their own they had changed. There was no way they could have changed another's, and it would become a problem the children would have to face when the time came. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved with the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.